Hello, I am Alice Watkins, Executive Director of Alzheimer's North Carolina. We have been the voice in North Carolina for individuals diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and their caregivers for more than 30 years. What started as a Duke University Family Support Program in 1980 now focuses its resources on the needs of the 170,000 North Carolinians diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. 100% of donations to Alzheimer's North Carolina remain in our state. Our mission includes education, family and community services, advocacy for a better quality of life for those affected, and funding to support research for a cause, prevention, treatment, and cure. None of this would be possible without collaboration with state, county, and local nonprofit agencies like the Rotary clubs in District 7710 in North Carolina. I am thrilled to be working with Rotary and a special Rotarian, Dr. Bob Malone of the Carrie McGregor Rotary Club, who approached me about developing this short program to provide Rotarians a better understanding of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias and the ongoing need for research. For Rotarians, that research effort is CART. Rotarians first supported Alzheimer's research in 1995 through the practice of voluntarily emptying their pockets of loose change at weekly meetings. This practice eventually evolved into the project known today as CART, Coins for Alzheimer's Research Trust, which has now expanded to include 14 Rotary districts in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, as well as a number of individual clubs throughout the United States. CART, a 501c3 nonprofit governed by a board of trustees and selected from Rotary districts supporting CART, has gone beyond Rotary members. The largest single contribution of $25,000 was made by a Western North Carolina resident in memory of the two sisters she lost to Alzheimer's. Today, more than 700 clubs contribute to the CART Trust Fund, where trustees commit 100% of donations to cutting-edge research grants to individuals and universities across the United States. From 1999 to 2014, more than $5 million were provided for 26 grants, with $500,000 in 2014, the most money granted in any one single year. Alzheimer's knows no social, cultural, racial, or political barriers. We must find a cause, prevention, treatment, and cure. With your help, we will.
My sunshine, my only sunshine, you make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
What else do you know? You know Amazing Grace.
Sing grace as sweet the Say but one like mine. I once was lost, but now
You know Daisy? Daisy.
Daisy, give me your answer, dear. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It might be a stylish marriage, we can't afford a carriage. But you look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two.
You're flirting.
Yeah, I can't help it.
Basically, you can consider Alzheimer's disease to be brain failure. Now think about that a minute. Have you ever known anybody with congestive heart failure? What's the big symptom of congestive heart failure? What do you notice those people have trouble doing? They start to get fluid building up in their lungs, and they
breathing sort of sounds like a breathing problem.
Yeah, they have a lot of trouble breathing. They get real short of breath. Where you're going to walk up to someone who's having shortness of breath because of congestive heart failure and say, "Come on, honey, breathe better." Come on. Now, you're not trying. You know, he could breathe yesterday. He's just not trying to breathe today. Come on. Try to breathe hard, JD. Would you do that? Why wouldn't you do that?
It's not really taking care of the problem.
It doesn't take care of the problem. It doesn't have anything to do with the fluid building up in the lungs. But people do this to people with dementia all the time, and it doesn't work. There are basically two processes that are affecting the brain of people with dementia, and with Alzheimer's disease specifically. The first part is on a structural, cellular level. The brain cells themselves, the neurons, are starting to die and shrink. And when that happens, communication between the cells is interrupted. You also have a second piece. You've got a chemical piece, and the little neurotransmitters that jump from nerve cell to nerve cell become depleted. So if the nerve cells are dying, the messenger chemicals that jump from cell to cell are becoming depleted. How do you think those people's brains work?
Not very well.
Not very well. And the reason people with dementia have problems and struggle is because of these processes. Now, Alzheimer's disease is a progressive disease, and it's fairly predictable in what we can expect will happen next. Doesn't mean everybody's exactly the same, because we've got 5 people here, and y'all aren't the same, so everyone's going to experience the disease in a unique way. But basically, Alzheimer's disease is a progressive disease. It's a terminal disease. And it affects probably 1 out of 10 families in the United States directly. We've even learned about the life expectancy of people with dementia, and it's actually getting longer. The average now expected life is between 8 to 12 years. And the reason the life expectancy is extended is not because we're able to change the disease, but it's because we're diagnosing it earlier. And so we know earlier in the disease when people start to have symptoms, and we can impact them a little bit better.
I want you to take a look at this and tell me the difference between those two brains.
The Alzheimer's brain is considerably smaller.
One smaller. What else? Particularly look this versus that. What do you notice?
The gap is
The gap is bigger. What do you notice about how big or how juicy the actual parts of the brain are? A little less juicy. Yeah. These people were the same age, same size, same sex. The only difference between these two people was one had Alzheimer's and one didn't. Okay. When Melanie said the brain shrinks, it literally shrinks. It will go down to 1/3 its original size. Now, it doesn't look that much smaller, but you have to understand, we'll be looking at some slides that'll help you understand, it's actually shrinking from the inside as well. Let me have you look at another slide. And these are going to help you understand some of the symptoms. The part of the slide I'm real interested in you looking at is right in this area versus that area. What do you notice?
It's gone.
It's gone. It's gone. This is memory, your ability to remember. So that's why one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease is people can't remember. But they can't remember in sort of a specific way. What happens is you lose immediate recall first. And what happens is, say 3 o'clock. What time am I going to go to the doctor's today?
3 o'clock.
Oh yeah, 3 o'clock. You know, now when I go, I need to ask him about this bump. It's been really been bothering me a lot. You know, now, what time are we going to go?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, yeah. Yeah, now you know when I go, I don't much care for him, but he's real good. You know, he's a real good doctor. Now, what time are we going to go?
3 o'clock.
3. How many times do you think I will ask him?
A lot.
A lot. The reason I'm going to ask a lot is because as I take the information in, you think, because I say it back to you, I've actually stored it, but when I go to put it in my file cabinet, someone's stolen the file cabinet. So no matter how hard I go and look, it's missing. And so when you can't find something, what do you assume? It's not there. So I'll say, now what time are we going to the doctor's?
3 o'clock.
Now if his voice changes, he thinks I'm stupid or something. He tells me he already told me. No, you didn't. If you told me, I would remember. So it gets into that kind of struggle. Early in the disease, what I find often with memory problems is it's the little stuff, but it wears on you as a caregiver. Okay? The disease gets worse. What you will actually do is almost travel back in time. You lose your most recent memories. It's just of the morning, it's just of the day, it's of the week, it's of a couple months, it's of a couple years. And you can't remember what happened in this part of your life. What becomes real to you is what happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago. What's going to happen then is I'm going to look at you, who's my sister, and think you're my mother, because I can't figure out how you could look that old, because I'm not. I'm this age now, okay, in my mind.
I bet you smoked your whole life, haven't you? Probably picked up that habit early on. Wait a minute, let me see here. I'm not best at this, right? There you go. How's that? All right. Now, have you smoked your whole life?
I've been smoking since I was about 14.
Oh my heavens. Woo! And now you're,
33.
You've been smoking a good long while then.
We can actually have situations where people look in the mirror and don't know who they're seeing and say things like, who's that old man? You know, get him out of my bathroom. I can't go in there. There's an old man in my bathroom. Get him out. And they're looking at themselves. Look in the mirror.
I don't know who that fella is.
You don't know who that fella is? Does he need a shave?
No, I don't think it is.
Well, let's feel it. Woo! What do you think?
I thought it was smooth and pretty.
When family come to visit, it's very hard on them because the relationship is lost. So what's going to happen with Alzheimer's disease is you will lose the ability to speak. And it starts off just with some word finding problems or some made up word kinds of things. So I want to go down to where we sing on Sunday. You know, worship, we go.
The church?
Yeah, the church. Can you take me to the church? Now, why can he still help me? What did I can give him enough clues. So even though I have problems finding words, I have enough other ways that I can get him to get the word. And we're still communicating, and it's okay. As long as he's willing to do that, it's fine.
What's the secret to making a good biscuit?
Well, I just, take and fix my,
Show me. What do you do with a good biscuit?
I just take it and grind it up, and then I'll take it and then, stick it over in the bucket, in the, thing, I can't even talk.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen my mama make biscuits. I know it. So you roll it up,
Yeah.
and then you kind of
I
pat your
pack
fingernail,
that.
you put your fingerprints on it,
That's right.
and then what do you do next?
Then I put mine in the
On a flat pan,
and stick it in the oven
and stick it in the oven.
and let it get done.
Now, how long does it take?
Hello, I'm Dr. Len Leachy, and I'm on the board of directors for the nonprofit Alzheimer's North Carolina. I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you what we know about dementia of the Alzheimer's type and our directions for the future based on what research is telling us. The most common form of dementia is dementia of the Alzheimer's type. It's a progressive dementia with typical onset after the age of 65, and the most prominent feature is pronounced memory loss and dysfunction in daily life. This disease takes a tremendous personal toll, a toll on loved ones, and a toll on society. But I'd like to suggest that we have the tools at our disposal right now to make a dramatic shift in how Alzheimer's is handled. Did you know that if we delay the onset of Alzheimer's by just 1 month, we can save $1 billion per year in direct care costs? Did you know that if we delay the onset of Alzheimer's by 5 years, we'll cut the incidence of Alzheimer's in half in 50 years? This may sound ambitious, but actually these outcomes are not at all ambitious with your help. Let me explain. Current rates of Alzheimer's in the United States indicate that about 5.5 million individuals are diagnosed, and we diagnose a new case every 68 seconds. We project those numbers to be greater than 15 million by 2050. Now, in 2011, the National Institutes of Health redefined Alzheimer's as a lifelong disease. One aspect of this redefinition is that what we typically define as the disease, the pronounced memory impairment and dysfunction, is actually the end stage. The earliest stages occur many years before. Outward signs may be present for almost 10 years before someone is diagnosed. We refer to this pre-dementia stage as mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. Everyone with Alzheimer's had MCI first, but they didn't know they had it. This is a critical point for diagnosis and intervention. You can see that right now there are an estimated 24 million people with MCI, and we expect that number to be close to 70 million by 2050. Take a look at this illustration of the typical course and point of diagnosis for those with Alzheimer's. Notice how individuals will decline for many years, even experience some dramatic declines before they are diagnosed. Sadly, that's routine care for Alzheimer's patients. Imagine if that were the case for cancer. For prostate or breast cancer, survival rates are almost 100% over a 5-year period when it's detected in stages 1 and 2. But those survival rates drop to only 25% when it's diagnosed in stage 4. So one of the problems we have with Alzheimer's is not necessarily the lack of tools for intervention, but more importantly, the fact that we don't diagnose and treat it until it's very late in the course. But that doesn't have to be the case. We can diagnose people much earlier. In fact, unlike many forms of cancer, we often have a very clear picture of who is most likely to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's, because age is the #1 risk factor. Look at how rare Alzheimer's is prior to the age of 60. But with each 5-year period, the rates double or even triple, such that as we reach age 85, a significant portion of the population is affected. In fact, if we include MCI, we're likely dealing with more than half the population. So what can we do? Well, there are a number of really important lines of research examining how to minimize our risk for developing Alzheimer's, and I'd like to briefly mention 4 factors: diet, physical exercise, mental exercise, and monitoring. Actually, I'm going to emphasize the latter because the first 3 already get a lot of press. Now, with respect to diet, there have been a number of studies published establishing the benefits of, for example, diets rich in omega-3s and antioxidants. One of the more recent and interesting lines of research has emerged from the fact that worldwide there are considerable differences in the incidence of Alzheimer's, with the United States having some of the highest rates and places like India having some of the lowest rates. Research has also shown that those emigrating from India to the United States who adopt a U.S. dietary practice develop rates of Alzheimer's comparable to our own. In contrast, those who maintain their dietary practices of their native India maintain the lower rates of Alzheimer's. This led researchers to focus on foods in the Indian diet, most notably turmeric, which is found in curry, and which has both antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Recent animal studies show that you can slow cognitive decline in genetically engineered Alzheimer's mice who are on diets enriched with turmeric. Research has also shown that physical exercise is beneficial because it increases neuronal production, this is called neurogenesis, and can increase the production of new neurons. In one study, 120 older adults were randomly assigned to aerobic fitness, a brisk 40-minute walk 3 days per week, or stretching. They found increased hippocampal volume, that's the part of the brain associated with the formation of new memories, only in the aerobic group, and this difference offset about 1 to 2 years of aging. Research has established that without engaging the mind, new neurons simply die off. Emerging data suggest that the effects of mental exercise, or brain games, are similar to low-dose pharmacological interventions. For example, one study showed improvements in processing speed, reasoning, and to a lesser extent memory, with some of these benefits lasting for upwards of 10 years. In another study, 200 older adults were randomly assigned to challenging mental activities as opposed to less challenging leisure activities like quilting or word puzzles. They found better memory for the group engaging in challenging tasks, with this effect persisting even after 3 months. Of course, all of these approaches that can reduce the risk are most relevant if we also monitor our brain's health. Now, the fact that it's the 21st century and we don't have procedures in place to routinely monitor our brain's health is almost inconceivable. We do have various methods for assessing the brain, MRIs, PET scans, and functional neuropsychological tests, but they are only administered when a problem is suspected. That would be like giving mammograms or prostate exams only to those who we know have breast cancer or prostate cancer, and only to confirm the diagnosis. In fact, as it stands, we leave the monitoring of our brain function to ourselves and to our primary care physicians. Unfortunately, neither of these approaches work. The person with memory problems is usually the last one to know, and that's because the very brain they are counting on to detect the problem is not working the way it should. In a report from the Surgeon General, it was concluded that in the primary care setting, less than 3% of those with mild dementia and less than 25% of those with moderate to severe dementia are detected. So how should memory functioning be monitored? The simple answer is a checkup from the neck up. Standardized tests to assess neurocognitive functioning have existed for many years, but they've traditionally been used to evaluate memory impairments after a memory disorder is essentially known. That is, patients are tested to confirm a diagnosis. Instead, we need to think of such testing as routine monitoring, which would parallel a routine physical. If this was the standard for memory care, then we would be more likely to catch memory problems at the earliest stages. So this means testing is not triggered by symptoms of memory loss, but instead by the presence of risk factors. And the number one risk factor is age. Another rationale for routine testing is that the sensitivity to detect problems can be increased because we can compare your performance to you instead of comparing you to the average person of your age and your education. This graph illustrates the tracking of Mrs. H over time on her cognitive performance. If she were only to assess her memory once, at time 2, she would not only appear intact, but even above average. But that would miss important information, and we would expect her to decline further. But if she was being monitored over time, then we would see that she has been declining faster than would be expected with normal aging. With the baseline information from time 1, we could intervene and get her back on track and then slow the rate of decline. The reason early detection is so important is because current FDA-approved treatments can slow the progression of the disease, not cure it or reverse it. Let's look at the data from this 8-year study showing the impact of early intervention on time to nursing home admissions. Half the participants were treated with a cholinesterase inhibitor like Aricept, Exelon, or Razidine, and half were not. Of those who were treated early, marked here as Group A, after 8 years, over 80% were still living independently, whereas for those not treated, marked as Group B, only about 10% were still living independently. These are real, measurable differences in quality of life, especially because the typical age of diagnosis is late 70s to mid-80s. It means this can determine where and how you spend the last years of your life. That's the implication for you and for your family. But what about society as a whole? At the outset, I said we had some very achievable goals of saving $1 billion per year in direct care costs if we delay the onset of Alzheimer's by 1 month. I just showed you a study that had a 96-month delay. We also had the goal of reducing the incidence of Alzheimer's by 50% in 50 years with a 5-year delay in the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. I just showed you a study that we can achieve an 8-year delay. Most importantly, all of this is achievable with the tools at our disposal right now. We just have to use them. So to summarize, it's important that we engage in preventative care, including diet, mental exercise, and physical exercise, and research is critical in all of these areas. It's important that we create a culture of routine memory care and start thinking about memory disorders like we do other health conditions. And finally, we have to understand that treatment can make a difference, but that hinges on diagnosing and intervening early. Thank you for your time and attention.